Bedaius. Somehow, I bump into secrets with you over and over again. Billy says I really shouldn't say that, at least not at the present time. But if you can give me your word that you will be silent over this for the time being, then I will inform you of the origin of my knowledge. You would still have to remain silent for at least 2 to 3 years. Quetzal says be sure of my word. Billy says well then the knowledge comes from the spirit teaching, and it is contained in the memory banks of Enoch and Cdemian. Quetzal says and you are able to withdraw knowledge from these memory banks and learn from this. Billy says I can, yes. Quetzal says you give me a new riddle, which I will have to solve. Will you tell me how you do this? That isn't possible for us. Billy says no, I'm not allowed to do that yet. Quetzal says is it possible, however, that you can instruct me in the teaching of the evolutive energy and the cosmic electromagnetic life energy, so that I can retransmit it, too? Billy says I can do that, but only at a later time, just when the time comes to do so. But now, what is with my question? Quetzal says be assured already of my and all our thanks. Billy says thanks are neither appropriate now nor later. It is part of my duty, as you'll find out soon enough. If you permit, I would like to ask another question regarding the financial crisis and economic crisis and the breakdowns of the firms, etc. through mismanagement, huge settlements, and salaries in the hundreds of thousands and millions of financial sums for managers and boards of directors, etc. Isn't it also true that the working class will go along with the greater demands for compensations and will also contribute to the whole disaster, whereby the workers' organizations or labor unions will probably also contribute a lot to it? Quetzal says that is correct, for that will actually be the case. Nevertheless, this evil also applies to the high state officials and leaders who have received outrageously huge and extensively translated remunerations and pensions since time immemorial, as I know from our investigations of a related form. And this translation of the remunerations of the leaders and administrators, etc. will be shamelessly boosted further in the coming time, while various layers of workers will only have pitiful incomes and livelihoods and will sometimes even live in bitter poverty. Billy says and what about health service, in terms of health insurances, will the premiums there be brought in line with the demands for high wages, making them more expensive? When I returned to Switzerland in 1969 and locked in health insurance for my wife, myself, Gilgamesha, and Atlantis with the Boyretzweiler Health Insurance Company, I paid around 35 Swiss francs a month for the 4 of us. In 1973, I had to change the health insurance company because I moved with my family to Himwil, and therefore, I joined Helvetia Health Insurance, and as you can see here from the health insurance book, in the month of June, I already paid 42.10 Swiss francs for the whole family. Then, in July, it was already 54.50 Swiss francs. Then Methuselah was born, after which the premium increased to 60.50 Swiss francs. From then, the premium rose further to 74.90 Swiss francs for 1974 and then to 86.30 Swiss francs as of January 1975, after which the whole thing continued to increase year after year. Consequently, I already have to shell out 213.50 Swiss francs for this month of December 1987. And the premiums are to increase enormously again next year, as has already been announced. If this continues in such a way, then I will soon no longer know how I should still shell out the health insurance for the whole family. To all of that is still coming 10% as well as a larger franchise amount per year, in addition to each doctor's bill. And as you know, my wife constantly has horrendous doctor's bills and hospital bills, as well as hospital bills for operations, etc. Quetzal says we have also looked into these concerns, and unfortunately, I have to tell you that the premiums will continue to increase rapidly, according to which you will soon have to pay about 300 Swiss francs per month for you alone. Billy says nice outlooks. So let's talk about something else. I still have a question regarding neutron stars, which exhibit the greatest density in matter, as our scientists say. A thimbleful of such a neutron star should weigh, as they say, about 1 billion tons. I would like to ask whether they haven't made a mistake in the weight, for I find 1 billion tons somewhat steep. Quetzal says nevertheless, it is correct. However, it is to be rectified that neutron stars do not exhibit the densest and heaviest mass but rather other objects in the material universe. The matter of these tremendously heavier objects is also of a different kind than what is known to the earthly physical scientists and astrophysical scientists as well as astrophysical chemists. Billy says aha, and what do you call these objects, and at the same time, does it concern stars? Quetzal says the second part of your question is to be affirmed in the way that, as a rule, it concerns former stars, so collapsed solar structures. But still, such objects also exist in the form of still active suns. We call the collapsed structures metandartelos, which translated into your language means dark heavy suns. We call the still active suns of this kind satandartelos, so radiant heavy suns or active heavy suns. These names correspond to traditions from very early times of our people. Billy says then another question that has reference to the moon. When I was allowed to make a lunar orbit once with Semyaza in her beam ship, she explained a few things to me about our Earth's satellite, so among other things, that the side which is always facing the Earth, or the crust of the moon, as this is called, is only about 35,000 meters thick. The back of the satellite, however, is about 70,000 meters thick. Moreover, the Earth with its moon is an absolutely special case in the Solar System because out of all the inner planets only it is orbited by such a large satellite, which stabilizes the rotational axis of the planet and which provides for the high and low tides and for the climate, which is relatively stable. About the origin of the moon, which drifted many millions of years ago out of your space-time configuration into ours and was captured by the Earth. The earthly scientists have the craziest ideas, one of which is that a large celestial body from the masses of Mars had already collided with the developing Earth in primeval times, by what means a huge piece of the developing Earth from its early days was torn out or ejected from this, in order to circle around the Earth in the end and firmly settle to form the moon. At the same time, it isn't considered with this crazy assertion that if such a chunk would have actually been ejected from the Earth, just by the collision with the Mars-sized space projectile, then this chunk would have been shot so far out into space by the unimaginable force that it would have sought its own way as a wandering planet through the Solar System and wouldn't have settled around the Earth. But now, I would like to ask you, why does the density ratio of the moon on the front and the back vary so much? This has to have its particular reason, I think. If you can still explain a few things about this to me, then I would be very grateful to you. Quetzal says the whole thing is founded in the mass and the attractive force of the Earth. Through the Earth's attractive force, the moon, during the course of its existence as an Earth satellite, has shifted the focal point of its mass away from the Earth, by what means its geometric center has shifted. This concerns an anomaly that can appear in any planetary satellite, but of course the mass and matter also play an important role, as well as the attractive forces of the respective planets and naturally the escape velocities of the satellites. This fact ultimately determines how the density of the crust of the satellite forms on the side facing away from the planet. If it concerns a moon that is constantly rotating on its own axis, so not a so-called quiescent moon, like with the Earth's satellite, then an aggregate satellite and average symmetry results. But if it concerns a quiescent satellite, which, therefore, always has the same side facing the planet, then the side facing away from the planet condenses, whereby then just the escape velocity of the moon plays a significant role. The force of the escape velocity pushes the mass and, thus, the matter outwardly and, therefore, to the side of the planet facing away from the satellite, but while it is held by the overall attractive force of the planet in its outer area,